Hey everybody, welcome to Goshen Prepping. EMPs, something that's very fearful, something we're very concerned about and want to prep for. But there's a lot of myths surrounding EMPs, by the way. A lot of stuff that's just out there on the channels and among gossip. A lot of things that are not true. So I'm going to go through 15 things about EMPs that you need to know to be prepared for. And honestly, at the very end of this video, you're going to realize you can actually breathe a little bit easier through some of these myths. Number one, an EMP from a nuke will crash the grid. That's both true and false, by the way. If you have an EMP over a specific area or possibly a ground nuke that actually caused the EMP, you may have the grid go down in that specific area for some time. But one EMP, even if it's a high altitude EMP, is not enough to take down one of the grids. It's not enough. You need, it's estimated, 6 to 8 across the country to take down all the power grid permanently. So that's good. So one EMP here, especially if it's a ground burst, is not going to go very far. Number two, EMPs only come from nukes. At one time, that was true. That was absolutely true, but not anymore. We actually have what are called E-bombs, tactical EMPs. They were designed for the battlefield, and honestly, they'll probably remain there. But they're really small, by the way, enough to fit into a briefcase. And they literally are for very precise surgical targets. They're not basically meant to take out everything, but it could take out your home if somebody aimed one at your home, for example. And our government has EMP missiles, like smart bomb type things, that can literally, like a guided missile, cruise through an area and target specific buildings to take it out, if that's not scary enough. Number three, pacemakers will be destroyed. This is a huge fear and concern. It is always asked on this channel, oh, I'm dead because of my pacemaker. Did you know that by far the majority of pacemakers will survive an EMP? Earlier ones, newer ones, there's actually been extensive tests on this. In fact, out of all the tests, there's only been one time a actual pacemaker was destroyed by an EMP. They fixed it, then they tried to do it again over and over, even with the same repaired one. It didn't work. So there's something weird about that one specific one. But rest assured, if you have a pacemaker, you're not going to die when an EMP hits, at least not from your pacemaker going. Number four, microwaves work as a Faraday cage. True, most of the time. You can actually put your cell phone in there. Most microwaves work, and that's what I want to stress is most will. You need to test it out to see if that's the case. There's actually some, by the way, that do not work as such. Number five, using a cell phone test doesn't work. Oh, indeed, it does work. It works very well. So like I talked about the microwave, but if you make your own Faraday cage, if you have a shed in your backyard, maybe you have a shipping container, whatever you want to use as your Faraday cage from small to huge, your cell phone will tell the tale. Just put the cell phone inside that box, try to call it a few times, try a few different ways to do it. And if it doesn't ring, doesn't basically pick it up, then great, you have made a very good Faraday cage, including some microwaves. Number six, cars will be destroyed. This has to be the biggest EMP myth there is. I don't know where it basically came from, but people think that an EMP will hit and your car is dead. I mean, newer cars, they always have some kind of magical year they pick out of a hat and say, cars before 1983 will be fine. But after, I don't know, maybe they have a 1982 model and that's where they get their number from. But even new cars will survive. And granted, new cars have a lot of microchips. And what happens is, since that car is not connected to the grid, that's actually what really destroys things, by the way, is the grid. Since the car is actually not connected, there's a chance a chip or two may fry. But out of those 150 chips that most cars have, most of them are not for the engine at all. It's for your blinkers or your radio or whatever. And you may have statistically one or two fry, but odds are it's not going to be one of the engine ones. Because the car does pretty well as far as having metal protecting it, but it does have gaps, so some chips might fry. Here's the stats, by the way, even for new cars, I mean brand new too, that if you're driving down the road, an EMP hits, your car will stall. But 95% of them will start right back up again. That's even without an EMP shield. So rest assured, now, if you have a car like an electric car and it's connected to the grid, kiss that car goodbye. It's going to be a really big paperweight in your driveway. But if it's not connected to the grid, by far, almost all cars will run again. Number seven, airplanes will be destroyed. And that is true. Some airplanes will be destroyed. And when we look at airlines, let's go and look at that one first. They're actually trying to make them hardened. And for the fact that they do have a metal shell, and a lot of stuff as far as the EMPs go is the same type of protection they already have for lightning. So a lot of airlines, if you're flying, will survive. Now, if they do stall out, that's not a word you want to hear on your airline. This is your captain speaking. We've stalled out. Basically, they do have a certain amount of time as it starts becoming this incredibly huge glider, which does not work very well. But they're trained for this. And most airlines will be able to start back up again. That's good. There will be some. By far, in the minority, will crash. As far as our military jets go, Military jets, this is something they've been practicing and working on for quite some time, for the fact that they're worried, of course, about EMPs taken out of the military. And at one time, a lot of our military aircraft were not protected, but every day they're trying to harden them even more. They already have some protection anyway, by the way. And there's even some systems that it's not affected by EMP anyway. But they're trying to harden all of them to make sure they are set in case there is an EMP. Number 8, all electronics will fail. That is not true. All electronics connected to the grid will fail. When you use the word all of them will. If it's connected to the grid, kiss it goodbye. It's going to get fried. Now, if you have like a cell phone sitting on the table, not near the electrical outlets, etc., or if you have like a radio, etc., those things, it's a roll of the dice. The majority of them will survive, by the way. The majority will survive. But I guess I'll ask you, do you want to have a roll of the dice when it comes to some of your electronics? I mean, your cell phone, you're not going to be calling anybody practically ever again if we have a major EMP attack. I mean, maybe you want to have pictures of your family on there. But maybe a radio. You have a radio and you want that radio to play in case somebody wants to give you some kind of radio messages. Maybe you have walkie-talkies, etc. If they're not connected to the grid, if they're not plugged in, they're not sitting next to outlets, it's a roll of the dice. Some will survive. But of course, if you want to be guaranteed to make them survive, just put them in a Faraday cage. But the rumor is, if it's not connected to the grid, a lot of electronics will survive. Number 9, our biggest fear is electronics when it comes to EMPs. That is certainly not true. There's 2 things we have to worry about when it comes to EMPs and being catastrophic. Number 1, by the way, is crashing the grid. So let's say there's a whole bunch of EMPs, then grid goes down. You being out without your microwave oven, that's not the concern. It's all these people, hundreds of millions of people without having food supplies. It's what you have to worry about. That's the biggest thing you have with EMPs. But secondly is this, especially the size of the EMP, or if we're talking about a coronal mass ejection from the sun, which is like, it works the same way as an EMP, it's just much stronger. There's actually arcs of electricity that happen between the power lines coming to your house and your house. When we saw a huge CME called the Carrington event in the 1800s, literally arcs of lightning went from the telegraph wires to the pylons, catching them on fire. We're going to see a lot of houses catching on fire depending on the size or the number of EMPs. That's something else to worry about too. And guess what? If that happens, the grid goes down, there's a lot of houses on fire. Good luck putting it out, because either the fire department's not going to make it to you because there's so many different houses on fire, or there's no longer any water pressure to make it happen. So lots of things to worry about besides simply just electronics. Number 10, your Faraday cage has to be insulated. So ultimately, free ions, that's what we're worried about. The movement of ions basically is what makes electricity or current. Think of it that way. And if you have a Faraday cage, let's say you have a big metal trash can as your Faraday cage, well, it's going to accumulate lots and lots and lots of ions. So what a lot of people do, it seems to be like cardboard is the big thing people use. They basically have your trash can, you have it lined with cardboard, inside of it are your electronics. I'm not saying no, it's not a bad thing. But what they basically say is this, that since that metal shield, that can is going to accumulate all those ions, and we need an insulator so those ions don't transfer to your electrical device. And that is smart, by the way. But when you look at the amount of size of the can, or the size of the can compared to the amount of electrons, it is almost going to be negligible. I mean, honestly, the best thing you're looking at is you need to actually have that can grounded. So literally, if you have a trash can and you have it properly grounded, and that's a whole different video on how to do that, in reality, you wouldn't even have to put an insulator in there because all those ions are going to shunt down into the ground and not into your electronic devices. But it's, again, one of those roll of the dice things. I have mine insulated. I don't use cardboard. I have really, really thick freezer bags is what I use. I'll link those below if you want to pick some up. That's what I use, but you don't have to use that. You could do some kind of rubber. I've noticed people actually will spray rubber coating in there. Or again, a lot of people use cardboard. You could even use glass if you wanted to. Kind of weird, but you could. But anything that doesn't conduct electricity, something that separates your gear from the can, is what you want in that case. Number 11, you have to foil tape your trash can or whatever. I mean, the trash can has it so usually the lid comes up and has a lip there, but maybe you have a big file cabinet. Maybe you have an ammo can. There's lots of things people use. And I'm not saying having foil tape around there might not be helpful. Again, use your cell phone test. There's a lot of trash cans, like my trash cans I use for my Faraday cages are so snug that you put your phone in there. I don't need any foil tape. I have one of our followers say they actually found a huge file cabinet, didn't need any foil tape. I actually had somebody who had a metal shed in their backyard, didn't need foil tape. So keep that in mind. Now, if you do have some holes in there, like little tiny holes and stuff, by the way, are going to be fine. The EMP, the electromagnetic pulse, and the ions won't travel through that little hole. It can't. It gets blocked. Bigger holes, yes. And of course, in situations like that, you're going to want to try to line it. Number 12, I use a Mylar bag as a Faraday cage. That is a bad idea, by the way. The actual Mylar bag, even though it is metal, is too thin to stop it. So the thickness of the metal does come into play, but honestly, it's not much of a thickness. Aluminum foil is thick enough to actually work as a Faraday cage, but unfortunately, Mylar bags are not. Number 13, a surge protector will stop an EMP. Not even close. I don't care what kind of surge protector you have in your house or on your gear, it will not stop that EMP, and your electronics will get fried. My main circuit breaker will stop an EMP. And people say, if it happens, I'm just going to shut off the circuit breaker for my entire house. Remember, we have huge arcs of electricity, almost like little arcs of lightning going from wires to your house. That circuit breaker contact, it doesn't put an insulation between them, it just separates them. It's going to arc right across and will still basically fry all your electronics. And 15, the EMP shields you buy, they don't work. Oh, yes, they do. You can get an EMP shield for your house. You can get an EMP shield for your car. I'll link below. American Reserves is one of our sponsors who we love. They have a huge lineup of Faraday devices, including EMP shield for your house and for your car. I mean, if you want to have the extra assurance, I certainly would say pick up one. I have many followers who have, and it basically just takes that ease. But what happens is with the EMP shield, and again, these have been tested using EMPs. We can make EMPs now very easily, and they have been tested. And what they do is instead of a circuit breaker or surge protector, which tries to stop it, the EMP shields will just shunt that power, shunt that electricity, that current, so therefore it won't affect your electronic devices. All right, anyways, guys, as you know, we're in the prepping community. There's always wives' tales and myths. There's 15 of them when it comes to EMPs. Maybe you've heard of some too. If that's the case, put them in the description below. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time.